They were the Germans of the future, the superior generation of a superior race, intellectually, physically, and morally greater than the youth of any other nation. Theirs was a time of change, excitement, and anticipation of a better life. The indoctrination and re-education of millions of German schoolchildren was just the beginning. Hitler's master plan was to create a new nation of strong, smart individuals who had powerful anti-Semitic ideals, yet were loyal to him and their country. As a result, the demise of Jewish children walked hand in hand with this revolution. When the Nazis came to full power in 1933, they implicated a number of vast changes within the education system, as well as youth programs designed by Hitler for boys and girls aged 6 to 18. These changes were made with the intent of Gleichschaltung, or the Nazification of society, and were driven by social, political, and economic factors that had been developing since before World War I and especially during the years of the Weimar Republic.
Germany needed to truly transform if they wanted to survive as a strong and confident nation. Hitler and the Nazis represented a completely new, albeit radical, way of life for all Germans. This was to be a new society, free from class division, conflict, and barriers, replaced by unity, equality, and loyalty. A popular term for this concept was Volksgemeinschaft. In this new nation, the community was prioritised before anything else, and there was a strong push for the idea that national interest was of much more value and importance than self-interest. After the chaotic failure of the Weimar Republic, this was a breath of fresh air for a country that had been starved, scared, and unemployed by the millions. For Hitler, his ideals and visions for the future were long-term, and if his plans were to be successful, it was crucial that the next generation supported the racial and social principles of his government. This is where education and the Hitler Youth come into play. By conditioning children to associate fulfillment and a sense of belonging with the Nazis, the youth were propelled into a plot to conform to Hitler's personal philosophy, essentially the ideologies that the renewed Germany would be built on. At the core of this philosophy was racial superiority and a very strong anti-Semitic notion, which essentially drove the changes in education regarding race discrimination. The Hitler Youth was an extremely clever way to prepare the next generation of perfect Germans, as well as a means to have yet another layer of control over the lives of citizens. This, in combination with a military-orientated education at school, intense fitness training, propaganda, and a growing sense of the individual self-becoming subordinate, changes were perpetuated with the intent of a long-lasting way of life.
For education, the Nazis' rise to power meant that schooling became warped into a mixture of systematic indoctrination to convince masses of children that anti-Semitism was logical and a means to keep a firm watch over teachers and students. Any teacher assumed to be disloyal to the government was sacked. Students were encouraged to inform the authorities if teachers said anything that did not fit in with the Nazi curriculum. School subjects themselves changed dramatically. In science, students were educated about various elements of military knowledge, such as aviation science and the impact of defense and attack tactics such as gassing and shooting. The history curriculum was transformed to gloss over everything that did not glorify Germany. The defeat of World War I was explained as internal societal liabilities, further weakened at the hands of Jewish people and various other political groups and minorities. It was taught that the Treaty of Versailles and hyperinflation were the malicious work of jealous neighbouring nations and again the Jewish community.
Students began learning Nazi-certified biology, which at its core was a study of racial superiority. This was taught to children as young as 6. However, older students were instructed on the problems that came with interracial marriages, which led to, according to the Nazis, a decline in racial purity. Hitler preached that no boy or girl should leave school without complete knowledge of the necessity and meaning of blood purity. For Jewish children, school became a place of humiliation, often being made to stand at the front of the class while the teachers pointed out how they were different to the other students. Non-Jewish students were encouraged to discriminate against the Jews, and the Nazis produced anti-Semitic schoolbooks. For example, one titled, "Trust no fox in the green meadow and no Jew on his oath." However, the process of completely denying Jews of an education was a very slow one. Female students were taught about what traits to look for in a life partner, as well as how to best serve as a wife and mother. They were educated in domestic chores and eugenics to further assist them in those goals.
The Hitler Youth was an organisation established by Hitler in a bid to shape German children and teenagers to conform to the ideologies of the Nazis. Controlling the young was not a new concept by the start of the Nazi era. However, after the party came to full power, all other organisations for young people, including sports, the Scouts, and various other clubs, were either combined with the Hitler Youth, banned, or abolished altogether. Professor Stefan Roberts visited Nazi Germany in 1936 and said the following: "The fight for the minds of youth starts in the cradle. Little boy and girl alike are pledged to sacrifice everything for the Führer and are taught that he is everything and themselves nothing." Hitler became entwined in every aspect of German childhood, with activities or meetings being held after and during school most days. Hitler put in an immense amount of effort to ensure that the members were happy, healthy, and most importantly, fully devoted to himself and the Nazi Party. Young boys that were enrolled were expected to participate in endurance tests and Nazi support rallies, develop a sense of obedience and self-discipline, and train to be soldiers for their country. Through hiking and camping trips, females were trained to put a considerable amount of effort into achieving high levels of fitness, as well as learning to cook and sew in anticipation of their role as a housewife and the mothers of the children of New Germany. By the time the war broke out in 1939, there were 7.2 million children and teenagers enrolled in one of these programs.
Das Korn ist reif, die Ernte muss schnell eingebracht werden. Wenn alle mithelfen, ist es bald geschafft.
The combined powers of an education that backed Nazi beliefs and values, as well as being part of a community of peers participating in activities, resulted in the brainwashing of millions of young people. This had a profound impact on the mentality of a generation of children who lived in Germany at the time. Amos Cologne, a former member of the Hitler Youth, spoke of the beloved comradeship, sports games, and camping trips in his book. However, he wrote the following in relation to becoming a youth leader: "It was preferred that people should not have a will of their own and should totally subordinate themselves." The program was essentially training men to be weak-willed. In the educational principles of New Germany, it is stated that a youth being trained for such important national duties must accept the idea of following the Führer absolutely and without question. A true tragedy of the Hitler Youth movement was the rise of boy soldiers. These young men were so mindlessly devoted to the Führer and so willing to prove themselves that they were killed by Allied fighters old enough to be their fathers.
Hitler wrote his book Mein Kampf while serving out his prison sentence, one of the lines reading, "Whoever has the youth has the future." This is certainly a belief he took very seriously in his scheme to build an empire. He viewed education as a tool to mould the children of Germany into exactly what he wanted by controlling and warping the curriculum. Nazi-approved education ensured that the next generation understood the importance of race, and the Hitler Youth guaranteed that they would be able to fight for Germany without fearing death.